were like those described in the visions of Aeneas, sleeping in the darkness. They were sleeping in strange, dark recesses. And when some came among them and shook them, they mumbled, "Disturb me not, for I am dead." And the Egyptian said that the only person who could say this was the person who believed in death. That death was a believing in death, and that there was no death but that believing. But having believed and being convinced of belief, man defends the belief with his own life. He cannot destroy himself. Therefore, he can only decline or reject the conscious existence of that which he is. So he sleeps. And if the present trend of materialism continues to flourish, areas in that particular region may become a bit congested. Because there are many who today claim at least to believe that there is no life after death. The Egyptian, however, held that this great sleep was not eternal, because a man can even be tired of being dead. He can even exhaust his own determination to prove that he is right. And because the maintenance of error requires continual vigilance, and he must carefully preserve his own darkness, he becomes weary, lets go, gives up, and like the man who has clung overlong to a piece of wreckage, decides that it is easier to be drowned. In this case, easier to believe than to deny, easier to live than to die. Because according to the Egyptian, men have to cling to death. If they let go, they live. Now, if the soul finally lets go, and it will sometime, because eternity can outlast the stubbornness of the most adamant creature. So eternity is patient, and it always wins. So when men let go of this unbelieving, we are reminded of the vision that is recorded in one of the rituals of the Eleusinian, where the candidate sees the great waves of sleeping souls flowing by him in the river of life. And the souls that have finally let go of the fixation of death find that they are floating, asleep perhaps, partly awake, but floating on and on, joining together like streams with all those souls flowing from the other gates, until all the gates merge and mingle, and the great stream pours back into life through the great doorway of the east. And in flowing back into life, they behold, as they approach, Anubis standing again upon the horizon, this time the horizon of the east. And we are remembered of a certain symbol of two St. Johns standing at the equinoctial and solstical points of a sphere. We are reminded of the gates of the east and west. And here Anubis stands ready as a bandmaster or the leader of a parade to act as the psychopompus or the herder of the secret and sleeping souls. And as they gather at the gate, dawn comes, and out of the great stream flows the wonderful ship of Osiris, the luminous bark of the dawn, and in it is the god surrounded by light. And upon the ship are the souls of the redeemed. They flow with him into the great mystery of the day. Therefore, life, birth, is a coming forth by day. Death is a going forth by night. And there are 2 nights and there are 2 days. And both kinds or parts of day, because they belong to the mystery of the sky and the air, are in the keeping of Isis, mother of mysteries, who must give birth to the man-child for the salvation of the world. And those who come forth by day come forth under the patronage of the mother, and they are born. And those who go forth into darkness by night in death meet there the dark virgin Nephthys, who gives them birth into the underworld. Now there is a second coming forth by day, for unless a man be born again, he shall not know the kingdom of God. And that which is called the second birth is the house of the great mystery, the great house of the Lord of Amenhotep, the great white house of Memphis. For this is the house of initiation into the great rituals, the house of the second birth. And over this presides again Isis, for Isis is the mystery temple, the mother of the sons, the mother, the widow, whose son shall inherit the earth. So all those who come forth by day are, as Kipling says in his poem, we are the sons of the widow. And because Victoria thought he meant her, she refused him knighthood for a number of years. That egocentric old lady didn't realize that there was anything in widowhood beyond the weeds of Windsor. But the widow is Isis seeking for her Lord. It is nature seeking for the hero, for the great power that is to redeem it, and which is fashioned in the image of the Hierophant, or the Lord of the mysteries. So souls coming into birth or rebirth materially follow in the great way a path of light, the rippling left behind by the ship of Osiris as it cuts through the sea of the sky. But Osiris also rules in that other ship, the house of the mysteries, the ship of the doctrine. And those who come forth in this house, into the house of truth, shall never again know night. For in the land of the redeemed there shall be no darkness. And in this concept, Osiris then becomes the Lord of the coming forth by day, the Lord of man's conscious decision to dedicate himself to truth, and to leave the shadows of birth and death as they burden the average man, to step into the immortal light of ever-consciousness. And those who achieve this immortal light are the Hashesti, the radiant hawk-headed ones. For the hawk is the Egyptian phoenix, the symbol of the reborn, that which has risen triumphantly from its own dead, for the phoenix is born from its own body. And these, the Hashesti, become the luminous ones who ride with Osiris in the ship of the sky. And they are the ones to whom he gives dominion over the air and the earth, and over the powers of the sun. And they are the ones who in the last great war shall form the army of the enlightened, and shall end forever the power of Apep, the serpent of darkness, the symbol of illusion. For light alone, the light of the soul, rescues man from illusion. So the Egyptian believed there is an overworld of truth in which the sun, as light and truth, rides supreme. There is an underworld of darkness, which is only illusion. And as Akhenaten himself said, actually, death is only a dreaming from which men waken into the love of God. So we cannot say the Egyptian was not a pious man, or that he did not have a wonderful and beautiful philosophy if we wish to look for it. Everything depends upon the way we approach it. 600 years before the beginning of the Christian era, Thales of Miletus was raised to great honor, and naturally, desiring to be a good citizen of Greece, he went to study in Egypt. Another great Greek, Solon, appointed Archon of Athens, and confronted with the problem of the mortgage stones, which had wrecked the economy of Greece, went to Egypt in search of wisdom. Pythagoras beat his body against the temple of Thebes for years, begging admission. The ancient world of the Mediterranean made its long and constant pilgrimage to the temples of Egypt, because men realized that there was a strange knowledge about the reality of things. And they knew that the Egyptians, under geometrical forms and solids, made likenesses of all their gods, and that they mostly were wise in the mystery of the soul, the journey of the soul through life and death, through darkness, the underworld, and out again into the great light of day through the blazing gateway of the east. So the ancient Egyptians recognized three conditions. They hailed Osiris at his rising, saying, "Behold, he is the dawn." They venerated him at the meridian, saying, "Behold, this is the light that casts no shadow." Or at noon, there is no shadow. And they hailed him the third time, "Great Osiris of the sun in its setting. We venerate you, we adore you. For you are in your dawning the creator of all things, and in your meridian the preserver of all things, and in your setting the transformer of all things, from one life to another." And the Egyptian also declared that there are three stations of the underworld: the gate of the west, which is the beginning of darkness, and is at the horizon of the double truths. Then there is the nadir, midnight, darkness, the lowest and deepest point of obscuration, where only the lunar Osiris floats in his little ship of the crescent orb. Then there is the third gate of the underworld, or the third station, which is the east, where the soul comes forth, perfected into light. Therefore, these three steps represent the 3 degrees of the mysteries by which men are regenerated, and the 3 degrees of life. For man must overcome not only the body, which is the west, but his desires, which are the south, and also his thoughts, which are the east. He must master them all, and conquer them, and pass through them into life. Now, if the Egyptian had this type of belief, I think we can appreciate how it profoundly influenced the rise of many other systems, including many phases of Jewish philosophy. In a very ancient inscription to Osiris, found in Egypt at a long and remote time, long before the captivity of the Jews, there is an inscription which says, "Hail, Osiris Eloha." Now, that is a peculiar thing to find in Egypt, because Eloha is, of course, the root and source of the term Elohim, or the name bestowed by the ancient Jewish people upon the creating power. The great division of Judaistic religious philosophy is based upon the Elohistic concept, as opposed to the later Jehovahistic. So that Osiris Eloah, or Osiris Lord, indicates perhaps that from the temples of the Egyptians it may well be true, according even to the biblical story, that Moses learned a great deal, for it is said of him that he was learned in the wisdom of Egypt. We know that the tabernacle of the Jews was patterned upon the Egyptian temples, and that the Ark of the Covenant is magnificently traced in stone upon the walls of the Temple of Baali. These parallels may cause us to assume that out of the mysteries of Egyptian religion came many things. In ancient Syrian and Assyrian culture, and perhaps as late as the apocalyptic writings of St. John. For the judgment in St. John is certainly the psychostasia of the Book of the Dead. The judgment, the division, the restoration, the spiritual life of man from the darkness of the grave. We have comparatively few legends about these things. We know that in the psychostasia, at one period, it was believed that those who failed were devoured by Typhon, who was present at the great testing, and who swallowed up the soul of the imperfect dead and voided it through his body. Of Typhon is the hippocampus, the creature of the Nile, the symbol of matter. Then that matter should swallow up the imperfect dead is almost a complete statement of rebirth, because Typhon was the lord of the objective material world, and he reclaimed those who failed in the test. Here we are again reminded of an interesting line in the Apocalypse, about which there has been much controversy, but it is perfectly good Egyptian philosophy. Whoso overcometh, him will I make a pillar in the house of my God, and he shall go no more out. This is a peculiar statement, but it parallels identically the concept of Typhon. In other words, those who do not overcome must go out again. And through Typhon they are reborn into a world of limitation and restriction. Like the Greek, the Egyptian did not resent rebirth. He did not even question it. He did not consider it a punishment for anything. Like the life itself, it was an opportunity. Mistakes would arise, tragedy would come, but life was good. And because it was good, it was worth living. And because it was worth living, man was forever grateful for it. And he was forever grateful for the conviction in himself that because of the infinite love and wisdom of his deities, his own life was eternal. He also believed that sometime, somewhere, some way, this great journey of birth and rebirth would end. He believed that sometime he would no longer be imperfect, and it would not be necessary for him to go out. And that when he had achieved to this end, he would have a place in everlastingness and be forever with his God. But again, because of the very concept that he had of God, based upon the same numerical speculations which later inspired Pythagoras to develop the monad theory, for the Egyptians were the source of his information, as he himself admitted, the Egyptian could not conceive of ultimate existence apart from his God. Even in the psychostasia, the deceased person is no longer himself. He is Osiris. When the priest Ani enters the underworld in the great papyrus named after him, he is referred to thereafter as Osiris who was Ani. He has ceased to have an existence apart from his God. He has returned into a nature in which there is no essential division between himself and the divine. This is apparently an implication of a superphysical state. He stands forming the aspect of the ka, which is the symbol that he is a soul, a being out of body. But he also held that at the end of things, he would not be a god. He knew, some way, mysteriously, that there was but one supreme power. In spite of the fact that the Egyptologists deny this, the entire structure of Egyptian theology requires it. And therefore, he must end by identification. Even in death, he becomes Osiris. In the last great enlightenment, which is the final unification of himself in eternity, he is truly Osiris. He is one with God, in glory and in splendor, one eternal. He is not a god. He does not live in a paradise with God. For these houses of Amenhotep pass away. They are only part of worldliness, part of an illusion. Half of this illusion objective, half of it subjective. Death and the afterlife are dreams, just as living, physical living, is a dream to the Egyptian. There is only one final waking, and that is through the second birth, the mystery of truth, the internal enlightenment. When this comes, when the second birth comes, the soul is perfectly and completely Osirified. That is, it becomes the God. It becomes not a God or one of the gods, but the very being itself. For there can be but one being, and all else is unreal, because God and God alone is real. Realizing this, we have a very high concept of the abstract end of this path of growth. Perhaps this concept was taken partly from Asia, where it was long taught as part of the secret mysteries of India. For we know that the Osiris cult is said to have been driven from India to Egypt in the form of a bull, or under the symbol of Apis. And Apis, of course, is the sun at the equinox, or the symbol of the breaking of the 8 of the year, for the horns of the celestial bull, which plows the furrows of stars and releases the spirits of the seeds from the sky. These things give us perhaps a little concept, and let us think about it. Is it so very much less realistic than our own? Is it essentially any different? Have we any better answer? Do we have any nobler concept than that we shall pass into a compensation or a condition suitable to ourselves, and that we shall live to grow and to learn until finally we merit enlightenment, and that through this enlightenment we become one with God? It seems to me that it would be hard to fail to see the essential sublimity of this concept, and perhaps even to admire the tremendously adroit use of symbols, so that profane centuries could never solve the mystery. And like the secrets of the glyphs themselves, the sacerdotal secrets are locked in shadows, in statues, in carvings, and in fragments of ancient papyrus. Yet if we are inclined to assume that they knew little and we know much, perhaps this is only what Hermes predicted over 2,000 years ago, when gazing upon the ruins of Egypt, he declares that the time would come when races and nations would rise and would really and honestly believe that the Egyptian had no ideals and no dreams, that he did not understand, that he worshipped beasts and birds, what Hermes pointed out, that those very ones who accused him would also be worshipping beasts and birds of some kind. That those who did not believe he knew would themselves be bowing down to false gods. So perhaps Hermes was not so far from it. In any way, this gives us perhaps a little panorama of the Egyptian life way as it relates particularly to life after death.